بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. What I'm going to present is the technical proofs contained within the book of Ibn Āshir in regard to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence, beginninglessness, endlessness, needlessness, dissimilarity, oneness, His complete ultimate knowledge, will, ability, seeing, hearing, speech, and life. For a simpler explanation, you can see my last class, the recording of which is shared in our chat, and it is shared in the link to each video and so on. So the last Wednesday's class, that was the simpler class with the simple examples, illustrating, bringing in different rational points, scientific points, etc., evidences for Allah's existence, beginninglessness, needlessness. Today's class is a little bit more technical. So be prepared for the technical nature of this class. For those who don't have the book yet, you can also find the link for it in the previous links that we sent out for this class to be watched. This is on the Masjid WhatsApp, it's on the Mahdara WhatsApp, it's on the online Islamic learning WhatsApp as well as on Facebook. We stopped around line 21, where he begins with the technical proofs. I'm going to go into some detail with some of them and not going to detail with other things, because for those, I would recommend somebody who speaks Arabic and is able to understand Arabic and has studied mantiq to go and open up the book of Mayyara, explanation of Ibn Āshir, and inshallah they'll be able to go into more advanced reasoning. And then beyond that, there's of course the books of Kalam and all of that, which you can study separately. But here I'm kind of presenting the conclusions of deep debates and discussions that were had, to just kind of give people a very simple understanding and basic understanding of why we believe in certain things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and proofs to put people's hearts at ease in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence, beginninglessness, endlessness, etc. This also serves as a refutation for people with false beliefs, people who believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a beginning, or people who worship something that is created, people who worship someone who is created, people who worship or claim to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then ascribe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala things that are not appropriate regarding His majesty, as He has clarified Himself. So, what are the proofs that are found in this book? Again, the proofs that I generally teach are not the ones found in this book. They are the ones that you can just follow the link that I sent, and that'll be a simple explanation that'll be beneficial to most people, especially to a younger audience or to somebody who's not a serious student of knowledge or doesn't speak Arabic. So he says here, I'll just mention the translation and I'll correct anything that needs correcting. He says in line 21, His existence has a conclusive proof, the need of everything that is created in time for a maker. So everything that is hadith, and you're going to hear this word come up, huduth, hadith, come up often. Huduth, you can translate it as createdness, but I'm not going to use that word because it's a loaded term. Because if somebody doesn't believe in a creator and we're establishing things about the one that is first, the one who must exist, and so on, to jump to the term creator, then this gives them a small, an allergic reaction, if you will. So, I'm going to try to go around using that translation. The need of everything that is created in time. That anything that went from non-existence to existence, that's another definition. Anything that at some point didn't exist and came into existence, it needs to have been brought into existence. And now he discussed the logical nature of this claim, or this conclusion. He says, if the universe began by itself, equality and preponderance would meet at the same time. And this alludes to that, and they say it alludes to the ancient scale of in pre-existence, before the universe existed. There was a possibility for it to exist, and there was a possibility for it not to exist. And at some point, the universe came into existence, relative to whatever was greater than the universe. Space and time coming into existence when they were in non-existence. For us to even understand this rationally is beyond our capability, but we know certain things about this event happening. That space-time and the universe coming into existence, something that is changing. Something that is changing means that it was created. It went from stage to stage. Therefore, at this point that we're in right now, because we are in a changing universe, there can only be a finite number of changes or a finite number of time that has passed for us to reach where we are. It cannot be that infinity passed for us to reach where we are. Therefore, the universe that we're in must be finite, must have been created, because it is changing and the things that are within it are changing. Therefore, because change occurs to it, it is something that is created. And equality and preponderance, what does that mean? I'll simplify it for people. Equality meaning things equal on a scale. Preponderance meaning one side being heavier than the other. So things were in non-existence, right? You have the scale of things coming into existence or not coming into existence. If they are lean towards non-existence, then things don't exist. If they're in equality, things still don't exist. If things lean towards, all of a sudden lean towards, things exist. Then those things exist. Could those things themselves, having not existed, made that scale lean towards existence? That's impossible. Acting upon themselves before they existed, well, they didn't exist to act upon themselves. Well then, could you say they were non-existent and then they also, so that scale was balanced, and then you have the possibility of them existing happening at the same time as, so the equality of that scale being equal to the scale being tipped to one side, that's also impossible. You cannot have equality and preponderance be the same, meeting at the same time. So therefore, and there's a deeper discussion to this. Existence, as they said, someone must choose the state of existence for a particular physical phenomenon at a particular time. For those things to come from non-existence to existence, that has to be done by something other than their own selves. That's the simplification of it. Since this physical phenomenon could not choose its own existence, since it was not present before it was created. Line 23. But that is impossible, and the beginning of the universe is derived from looking at the changes of the attributes which describe the parts of the universe, knowing that attributes are intrinsically tied to essences. So the essence itself is the thing, and the attribute in it is tall, or short, or all of those things. Those are things that are intrinsically tied to those essences. So this is he's referring to some kalam terminology of ayn and arad and all of these things, which if you don't know it, then to simplify it in English would be doing you a disservice. Here he mentions, though, the beginning of the universe is derived from looking at the changes of the attributes which describe the parts of the universe. and knowing that attributes are intrinsically tied to essences. So that means there is change that happens to things in the universe. The universe itself is something that is changing. And we know that as a scientific fact now as well. So because it is something that is changing, as we said, it couldn't have existed always and forever. You can always add to the future, but you can't add to the past. You can't add to the past. Something that is changing from one state to another, that is temporal, that meaning that is within a frame of time, that was within time, must have had a beginning. And sure enough, that is not something that people debate nowadays, so it's not even necessary to go deeper into this. But we did have to debate this again with atheists for a long time. For over 1,000 years, Muslims are debating with atheists, is the universe beginningless? And we're always saying, no, it's not, no, it's not, it can't be, it can't be, it can't be, it changed, it had a beginning, etc. They're like, no, the universe itself is the answer. There's no creator, the universe itself is that supreme constant. We're like, that's impossible because the universe changes, and something that changes had a beginning, and something that had a beginning was brought into existence from non-existence, and therefore couldn't be the absolute supreme constant or the first. The universe must be created. So alhamdulillah, that discussion kind of died down with a big bang, and then they just tunneled into a different excuse. But we're going to get more into where they ended up. But we're just going now back to those same 13 attributes that we discussed, which are just those 13 attributes that are taught by scholars of Aqidah throughout the years to explain to somebody who doesn't know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala some of the most necessary things to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's pretty much what they are. So now he's providing the logic, why we believe in each one of them. And you'll notice he'll get to one of them that the reason for it is not even a logical reason. And we'll get there inshallah. Line 24, if beginninglessness was not his necessary attribute, his having a beginning would obligate an infinite loop or regress. And this is very simple, rationale and logic, which is that the infinite regression fallacy. That if your argument hinges on saying that that there was something before something else, and then there was something before that, there was something before that, like go back to the beginning of the line. Well, you go back to the beginning of the line. No, there's always one more person, and you go back to the beginning of the line. That means there's no end of the line. There's no beginning of the line. Or if you say the creator was created. Okay, well then who created that creator? Then another creator created that creator. Well, who created that creator? Another creator that created that creator. Oh yes, it was always just different things creating themselves and from a different source and from a different source and from a different source, and it never ends. That's a rational fallacy. That means if your argument hinges on that, that means you know that you're wrong. That's another way to simplify it. That's called infinite regress. So that's, and Shaykh Salik rahimahullah, he added another explanation here. He said that either if you're saying that beginninglessness was not an attribute of the creator, that not only would this would entail one of two possibilities. One is infinite regress, or one, wal-'iyadhu billah, that he created himself and brought himself out of nothingness into somethingness. So even if people who claim to worship the universe or the universe is the whatever, we are the ones who refuted their logic by saying that very same thing, that it would have had to create itself. And if your logic hinges on that, wal-'iyadhu billah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to create himself, or that there was another creator that created him, or another creator that created him, we're saying the simplest way that solves this is by saying the one that is first. And could the one that is first have had a beginning? Well, that brings about two possibilities. Either something else was before, or nothing was before. If nothing was before, then nothing is first. If something else was first, then what is first is not first. And that's a contradiction. So it's impossible for something else to be there before the first. And it's impossible for nothing to have been first, because if nothing was first, then nothing would ever happen. We went into these discussions. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, so a lot of contradictions. So it's like you have to understand when we're making a rational judgment There are things that are inconceivable, and there are things that are possible, and there are things that are impossible. And there are things that are necessary. It's one of those. It's either this thing's a rational possibility, it could be that way. Or it's impossible for it to be that way, or it had to be that way. So we're saying it couldn't be that way. And here's definitive proof. So, a lot of atheist arguments, also, if you look at them, if you delve deep into them, they'll reach the point, and I've reached this point with several atheists, where they tell you, oh, you reach like a rational conclusion, and they're like, oh, but you know, we've held a lot of beliefs about science and whatever that we've changed our minds throughout history and so on. It's like, look, we've had a lot of beliefs about science that were wrong, but this is, I'm not telling you even a scientific reason, I'm telling you a rational reason. What you're saying is irrational, it's impossible, it is inconceivable for this to have happened. And if you are willing to believe that it is conceivable for something to have come from nothing, or for nothing to be the creator of everything, or for there not to be a first, then admit it. Oh, it's just maybe we don't understand, we're looking at things wrong, or whatever. Okay. If you're hinging your entire eternity over that and ignoring all the signs and the miracles, you are willfully ignoring what is rationally, plausibly, and necessarily the truth. You're willfully just looking for any type of irrational thing to cling to avoid accepting what our brain is designed to know as the truth. Line 25. If he were able to pass into non-existence, so far we've discussed beginninglessness and endlessness. So far we've discussed beginninglessness, now endlessness. So here you'll notice they're going into this type of reasoning where they're exploring the alternative to what is being claimed. They're saying the one that is first couldn't have had a beginning or end. Couldn't have had a beginning we already addressed. Now they're discussing, okay, well, what if he could have had a beginning, and what if he couldn't have a beginning? Okay, it's impossible for the one that is first to have had a beginning. Well, is it possible for him to have an end? So he's saying, okay, if he was, then. So you're going to see they're going to entertain the idea of that which is impossible and say about and mention what irrational things and contradictions would arise if those things that are necessary about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were contradicted. Okay, so we're literally doing the job for you guys who are opposing us and disbelieving in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and exploring the rational possibility of us being wrong. Is it possible? We're the first to explore it over here. Right after we told you how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must be, then we're telling you here we'll explore the alternative. If he were able to pass into non-existence, his attribute of beginninglessness would be negated. Okay, how is that? I'm going to explain in a second. The rest of the line, if he were similar to creation, his having a beginning would definitely be true. Meaning it would be necessary, which is impossible. So let's talk about beginninglessness. He's saying that being able to pass into non-existence necessitates or negates beginninglessness. Meaning, being able to be non-existent. Were you non-existent at some point? That means, can you die? Is it possible for you to cease to exist and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to disappear your soul also? Yes. Non-existence is a possibility for you. Therefore, you must have had a beginning. And I'll talk a little bit about that, even though I encourage anybody who really is a student of knowledge, who wants to get into more of it, and you're good in Arabic and you're, mashallah, these things are relevant to you, which again, 99% of people, they are not. Then go into Mayyara's Sharh. I'm not, even me going into the other explanations, some of the students said, well, look, this is too technical for us and so on. But my answer is that, well, look, mashallah, there's students of knowledge who are listening. There's people who are absolutely beginners who are listening. This, just today, it should be the last day of the not for beginners stuff. So I apologize again, but and some of the teachers of this book, they skip over this section because it's not relevant to most people. But I felt like my goal is to try to summarize all of the books that we learned with Shaykh Sadiq rahimahullah, and to go through his explanations and to try to deliver them in as understandable of a way as possible. And here I'm really testing the limits of what is, what I should go into and what I shouldn't. Anyways, if non-existence is impossible for him, then it must be negated both previously and in the future. Okay? For the one who non-existence, we said beginninglessness is necessary for him because it is impossible for the one that is first to not exist. And if non-existence is impossible, that means that negates both beginning and end. Another way to look at it would be the one who is beyond time is non-temporal, and words like beginning and end apply to things that are temporal, that are confined to time. And the one who is beyond time and in fact created time and made time come into existence from non-existence, to say that such a one would end or can end is foolishness. Again, the other way that I negate this before it even becomes a question is I refer to him as the first or the supreme constant. And the constant that is beyond time, a constant that is greater than time. Time is such a constant that does have a beginning. Sorry, whether you like it or not. Argue with the Big Bang Theory now, just take it up with the scientists and leave, if you don't understand, mashallah, the Muslim philosophers over the years, who were saying that the universe had a beginning. Now take it up with scientists. They'll tell you space-time began with the Big Bang. Okay. So if time can begin, we're saying the supreme constant, a constant that is greater than time, that made time come into existence from non-existence. The non-existence of such a constant is what is impossible. Not the non-existence of time. Sorry. Time at a point did not exist. The one who it's impossible to not exist is not time, it is the supreme constant. Now you understand what I mean by the supreme constant. So just using that term just kind of takes care of the issue in itself. If you're saying, oh, there is no constant, then you're wrong. If you're saying the constant is the universe, well, that's what atheists were saying for 1,000 years until, mashallah, we disproved them logically and rationally, but they don't want to listen. There are people and then once they were disproved by their own science, well, then they still didn't change. Okay. So one explanation that I wrote here at the summary in the notes, I said creation exists relative to space and time. Okay. So so did we understand that part? If non-existence is impossible for him, then it must be negated both previously and in the future. Okay? So, which is line 25. If he were able to pass into non-existence, his attribute of beginninglessness would be negated. Right? Because non-existence is impossible for him. Anyways. Now, similarity. We're saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is necessarily dissimilar to the creation in all of his attributes. Makes sense? Is it possible for Allah to be similar to his attributes? Brother Ramzi? Brother Photo? Impossible to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be similar to his creation. Okay, if someone says, no, actually he's similar, we'll say, well, if you're claiming he's similar to his creation, his having a beginning would definitely be true. So being similar to the creation would necessitate huduth. Because what did we say in line 23? One of the hardest to understand sentences that we said so far. The beginning of the universe is derived from looking at the changes of the attributes which describe the parts of the universe. and knowing that attributes are intrinsically tied to essences. So if the essence of us is hadith, we are created, all our attributes are hadith, are contingent and created, and were brought from non-existence to existence. We can gain new ones and lose them, and so on. The one who is beginningless and endless and supremely constant has all of his names and attributes, has always had all of his names and attributes. And they're not parts. Okay? And if he had one of the attributes of that which is hadith, that would mean he would need to be hadith. Because all of our attributes are tied to our essence, which is hadith. So here's how I worded it. And honestly, this is to just simplify things and to figure out a way to kind of explain this, and especially the Arabic, in a way that's understandable was a bit of a challenge. And I think I'm coming short a little bit, but perhaps doing better than other translators have tried before me. Allahu A'lam. Here's the explanation, here's what he says in the book, and here's the translation. He says, if he were similar to creation, his having a beginning would definitely be true. Okay? So here's what I explained it with. Creation exists relative to space and time and is contingent upon being created. All the creation is created, obviously. Everything that is brought from non-existence. What do we mean by created? We mean brought from non-existence to existence. And changed from state to state. We can be ignorant and gain knowledge. We can be wrong and then, alhamdulillah, change our mind to it as right. Allah created us in a state that we can change to that which is better. So please, when you learn the truth, accept it. We established that change is the clearest evidence of huduth. Change is the clearest evidence of something having non-existence. Because you have a quality that you didn't have and now you have it, that's change. That quality itself didn't exist with you and now it exists. Therefore what? You as a human being at one point didn't exist. Make sense? So, change is the clearest evidence of truth, and that's how we surmise that the universe itself has a beginning. Which, wow, we were 1,400 years ahead of science on that one. So if you don't understand the rationale of what I'm saying, but at least witness, how we were right about this the whole time, and maybe, consider that there are some things that are beyond the scope of your understanding. And maybe you should sit with somebody until things make sense and ask your questions if you truly want to arrive at the truth. I'm not saying blindly accept something because I'm saying it. No, actually, we said that if people just believe in things just because they were told that this is what it is, that type of faith, in some opinions, minority opinions, is not accepted. And you're hearing this from somebody who people are calling Ash'ari, right? Anyways, huduth applies as necessarily to all of our attributes and qualities, as does qidam apply to all of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes. We are necessarily alameen and created. And the Rabb is Qadim. All of our attributes are hadith, all of his attributes are Qadim. Therefore, there can be no overlap or similarity, as all our qualities are hadith. Here's a way that I explain it to a little kid. Like if you're playing a video game, right? There's space in that video game, isn't there? There's different characters and there's themes and you're controlling the thing and moving around, and there's a whole world. If you compare the size of that world in reality to the size of this world, to the size of a penny in this world, how big is it? It's two different realities that any way of measurement of them is completely It's complete foolishness. This world is made of zeros and ones, and this world is made of neutrons and protons and electrons. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not made of anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not made of things, not made up of parts. He is truly one in His essence itself. He doesn't have created qualities that are a part of a list that come and go. Allah is one. Okay? It is impossible for anything to be like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's another way of explaining it. Okay. So, in that sense, to get a little bit saucy and controversial, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to grant access to all of the believers, to all knowledge, keeping whatever private things He wanted to keep private, or let's say, hypothetically, all knowledge to all the believers in Jannah, that you want to learn about everything that happened on earth, it's an open book for you to learn. Anything. To all knowledge. Past, present, and future. To all the believers in Jannah. Would that make the believers in Jannah equal in Allah to His knowledge? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The way they know it, their knowing of it, their experience of knowing it, it being created, the whole essence of knowledge, to the creation it means one thing, to the Creator it's something else. So it does not make something Creator-like to be given something by the Creator. And truly, the one who truly knows it and will always be the only knower is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it doesn't make a difference if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave access to the knowledge of the Lawh al-Mahfuz to one of His creation during this world. No, it does not make any difference rationally. It does not make any difference. And to think that it would make them similar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be to say that the Lawh al-Mahfuz has knowledge equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which would be to do shirk by saying that the Lawh al-Mahfuz is knowledge, or what is contained in it encompasses Allah's knowledge. Wal-'iyadhu billah. So understand aqeedah and understand what is shirk and not shirk, and rational and irrational. Once you understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His oneness and His greatness seems a lot less threatened by the greatness of His creation and what He gives them. If you understood that sentence, Allahu Akbar, for the people who understood it. Okay. Similarly, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave everybody in Jannah the ability to do with their Jannah anything they wanted, would that be negating His power? Would, if He gave them like access to a universe like ours and they can do whatever and control everything and know everything in it and so on, would that mean that they were like Him in His power? A'udhu billah. Far from it. Right? Nobody can share in an ounce or anything. There's no such thing as 1% of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power or His knowledge or His ability. There is no possibility of similarity or overlap. That's what we just established. That's what I want to make sure you understand. What you rationally just established right now is that it is impossible for there to be overlap. No matter what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives His creation. The funny thing is, people will have no problem believing in the miracles Allah gives the Dajjal, while they have problems with the miracles Allah gives the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the crazy thing. People have no problem in believing the crazy things that a magician can do, but they have problems believing what a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do. And that is absolute foolishness. You're giving all respect to the shaitan and what the shaitan knows, and the shaitan is able and he can be there and he can whisper to 500 people at the same time. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam you're minimizing. And the Dajjal, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, astaghfirullah al-azim. Okay, so understand, please be a rational human being. So if you're looking at atheists and saying, haha, look at that, they're coming to irrational conclusions, well, if you're learning your aqeedah from people who have a problem with rationality, and you're coming to, and now everything seems like a threat against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's oneness and His power and His greatness, because you have minimized Him to be like the creation, then there's a problem with your aqeedah or who's teaching you the aqeedah, But especially if the thing that is giving you the allergy is something that all the Muslims have accepted and has been very commonplace in the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and throughout the history of Islam, until whichever teacher of yours in history came along and had an issue with it. Okay, moving on, line 26. If independence were not his necessary attribute, he would be in need of a maker himself. Among other things, he would be in need. That's how the book says it. The translator added of a maker himself. He would be in need. He'd be in need of a maker, he'd be in need of a sustainer, he'd be in need of this, he'd be in need of that, he'd have faded away. If the one that is first was something that needed anything, it would have faded away. It would have not been able to create anything. It would have not existed in the first place. Because simply existing as first, meaning that you did not need anything else. And for the fact that creation exists means that the one that is first is able to create without needing ingredients. The other line was, if he were not one, then he would not be able to perform actions. So again, the first part is self-explanatory. Needs equals incapacity. That's what needs means. Incapacity. Whereas rationally, the one who is first's necessary existence would be negated if he needed a creator or sustenance. And the existence of everything else would be impossible if he needed even one single ingredient. And in regard to the other line, if he were not one, then he would not be able. Okay? This one took a little bit for my head to wrap around what he meant by it, because the explanation that was provided was not was just passed over, and subhanAllah ties into exactly the way that I explain it normally, and this I did not include in my explanation in the briefer video. So here's the way that I explained it to kids. I'll start with that. I tell them, look. And it turns out, and I used this explanation before I knew the immovable object and the philosophy thing. I said if the Hulk came in, and I used to say Superman, but then people obviously brought up kryptonite. If the Hulk came in and he said, I can smash any wall, and I claim that this wall cannot be smashed, can both of those statements be true? It's impossible. They're contradictory, right? How old are you? 6. And he was like this immediately. Okay? Either when the Hulk punches the wall, either it'll be smashed or not smashed. If it's smashed, then he can probably smash any wall. But if he smashes it, then that negates that the wall is unsmashable. If he cannot smash it, then that negates that he can smash any wall. So this ties into what? There cannot be two omnipotent beings. If there are two omnipotent beings, then neither is omnipotent. All-powerful. Omnipotent. All-powerful. There cannot be two, because the existence of another would limit the power of the first, and if there's two, that means neither is able to do is ala kulli shay'in qadir. And if there's a question to their qudra, then how is anything possible? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَا. If there was controlling the universe other gods besides Allah, then the universe would have fell into disrepair. It would have, what did the way that I translated it? It would have fell to ruin. If you can't have, two managers of the same company was a joke in the office, right? That was one of the episodes where they had two managers, and it's a joke. It's a premise for a skit. It's a funny thing. It's a ridiculous absurdity. And you have every atom still doing its thing since the Big Bang, subhanAllah. That's one clear, and there's many discussions about this, so if you're interested in mashallah and you're at that level, mayara, or go study kalam, alhamdulillah. Num'at al-i'tiqad, mashallah. Nice. Anyways. So yes, impossible for there to be more than one omnipotent being, and necessary for there to be one omnipotent being. So impossible for there to be more than one omnipotent being, because neither would be omnipotent, and it's necessary for there to be an omnipotent being. Otherwise, how did everything come into existence from non-existence? So it's impossible for there to be more than one, or for one to be separated into parts, each having some ability or inability. And in Mayara, he has a very interesting discussion. He goes in detail about the types of oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the oneness of himself, his essence, the oneness of his being, his names, his attributes, etc. And the oneness of being independent of anything, of any of his attributes being dependent on anything other than himself, of tools or parts, limbs, etc. Doesn't see using cameras and using whatever tools, etc. He goes into that whole discussion. Since I want to finish within the next 5 minutes, I'm not going to go into that. If he were not living, willing, knowing, and powerful, okay, that's line 27. If he was not living, willing, knowing, and powerful, you would not see a world full of wondrous creation. You would not see a world. Right? Remember the pink unicorn dust machine example? I said, Stephen Hawking said that the universe came from one singularity and 1/1000th the size of an atom. And I said that's perfectly well and lines up with what the Quran says. كانتا رتقا ففتقناهما, no problem. But Stephen Hawking comes and also says the universe came from nothing. So that's where I have the pink unicorn dust example, where I was like, look, if you have a machine in a room that can make absolutely anything, but it needs pink unicorn dust in order to run. But don't worry, the pink unicorn dust machine can create pink unicorn dust, but it needs that first grain of pink unicorn dust. Would the machine ever do anything? No. Well, if that's the machine that is all that existed, even if there was a human there to operate it. Well, if there was a human there, if there was no human there to operate it, if there was no one to operate it, if there was no will being applied, then that machine would remain on standby forever and ever, even if there was a sack of pink unicorn dust next to it. Make sense? So, not only, and what if it's able to you tell it make a elephant, and it doesn't know what an elephant is? Can it make anything that it doesn't know? So, living, willing, knowing, ability, power, right? Those are all proven simply by the existence of a world, of a universe. So the other side of the pink unicorn dust machine example also it gives us a rational understanding of why the creator could not be something that is not willing and not knowing and not powerful. And then we had the Fortnite example, which I already went into in the other thing. If you're interested in these examples, my other video is nothing but these examples. And by the way, I've never formally studied any book of Kalam in depth. So if you want to study Kalam in depth, you go study it with somebody, mashallah, more proficient than myself. The majority of my life, when it comes to matters that are beyond my understanding, I say Allahu Alam, and I leave it up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran. And if I see a ta'wil that is made by the scholars, then I look at what the Quran says in regard to accepting ta'wil, and I accept any ta'wil that the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah have accepted as broadly as being a possible ta'wil. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to ask me in the Day of Judgment about something that is beyond beyond what I'm held accountable for. Anyways, but yeah, simply these examples just from interacting as a Muslim in the 21st century and the late 20th century with people who didn't believe in Islam, that you have to learn how to explain things that just seem so obvious to somebody who doesn't believe in them. And actually it was an earnest conversation. I'm talking to them, I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, hey, I'm curious to know. I know what I know and I know what I believe, but you believe something other than me, and you seem like a rational person, so here are my questions, and help me arrive at like why I'm wrong and why you're right. And those conversations never ended up with that. Always ended up with, okay, well, yeah, I'll get back to you. Or, oh yeah, now I respect your belief. I didn't ask you to respect my belief. Let me respect your belief. Answer my question so I can understand. What is the rationale for your thing? Do you like, anyways. People telling you they respect your belief like you've been waiting for a pat on the back from them for your whole life. Subhanallah. Anyways, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide all those people who, sometimes we judge somebody as being stubborn or whatever, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow everybody with sincerity to reach Him. That's the key right there. Because you're wrong about so many things in your life, and you have to keep on adjusting and so on. And if you're sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide you. And to be sincere to the right people as well helps, because if you're truly sincere to Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and you are able to cut off, even and show respect to different scholars who have showed up through the history of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, who have claimed to be from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and if they're wrong, and if they have contradicted the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah in any matter, then just leave what they say. That's how you're loyal to the Sunnah and the understanding of the believers. If you're sticking to those scholars even against everybody else, then you're not a true and sincere follower of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And that's something that was a bitter pill to swallow at some point for myself. Although not too bitter, because I didn't really have that ta'assub, alhamdulillah, and before at least I don't think I did. Although there was some matters that I was kind of very wrong in. There are some of those explanations or answers that people give sometimes that aren't even thought out, that I roll my eyes at hearing, that I would make the same argument at some point. Anyways, sorry, we're going inshallah within the next 4 minutes. Bismillah. So, if you were not living, willing, knowing, and powerful, you would not see a world. There would be no world that exists. The second part of the 6 if-then clauses above are false. So it follows that the first part is also similar in being false. So when it says if this or this, if he wasn't, then this would be. If he wasn't, then this would be. And it's saying something that's irrational and why it's irrational. So he's explaining, don't believe the things that I'm saying. We're just looking at those hypotheticals to point out their absurdity. Please don't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a beginning or any of those things. We're just saying if, so we say then, and this would be necessary, and that creates all those contradictions that we have mentioned earlier. If you don't understand anything I'm saying, then just stop listening to this video and listen to the other video that I shared. Hearing, sight, and speech are taken from the transmission in the primary texts and also properly fit in with his perfection. Okay? Seeing, hearing, sight. Can we, seeing, hearing, speech. Can we imagine what that means in regard to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No. Can we arrive at those things from our own conclusions? Not necessarily. Those are not necessarily taken from rational arguments. We're taking them because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that about himself. And properly fit in with his perfection. So you have to understand that anything in regard to seeing, hearing, speech is not contingent upon, is also beginningless, endless, etc. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's seeing, hearing is not changed by something happening, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's speech to Musa alayhi salam was not created at that beginning. Allah's speech is not created, it's eternal. Allah allowed Musa alayhi salam to witness his pre-eternal speech. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not creating a new attribute of himself as that went on. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created us, and He knows our experience, and we hear things and we see things, we interact. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can reveal whatever He wants to us at any point of His eternal speech in any language that He wills, rationally. Although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to reveal a new revelation like that, and besides for inspiration and so on, until until the Day of Judgment. Anyways, line 30. If a contingently possible affair were impossible or necessary, it would obligate a change in the realities of the physical world. That's what it says. Of the physical world, again, is known as parentheses. I've found that those parentheses, more times than not, are not very useful in that book. But they help explain it to some people to simplify it, but they also restrict the meaning. It would obligate a change in realities, period. If a contingently possible affair were impossible if necessary. I'd like to talk to somebody to make sure I'm being clear. Brother Ramzi, can you be my subject this time? Okay, so for any rational judgment, we either, our goal when we explore the rationality of any rational statement or rational judgment, we are trying to judge whether it is possible, whether it's impossible or inconceivable, meaning, or it is rationally necessary, meaning the opposite of it is inconceivable. Okay? So can something be more than one of those things at the same time? That I say something is possible, but, possible and necessary? No, it's either possible or it's necessary. Possible, when we say possible, in that classification, we mean that it is something that the negation of it is possible also. So no, when we say something that is mumkin, we mean that it's the opposite of it is mumkin. But if something is necessary, then so here he's saying if a contingently possible affair were impossible or necessary, it would obligate a change. You'd need to change the realities of the fabric of how rationality works and of everything to make something that is rational, contingently possible, impossible, or necessary. So there go all atheist arguments. They're saying that, that's necessary. You run everything in your life based on the same rationale. You make every judgment of your life based on the same type of logic. When it comes to believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's where you're like, I can't listen to my logic anymore and my rationale. And the things that are inconceivable maybe are true. Why is that acceptable? Why didn't you not go, why didn't you just sit there and maybe the possibility that knowledge would just come in your head? You went and you studied and you learned and whatever, and you were influenced and you came up with you were influenced by their biases of your teachers and their philosophy and atheism and whatever. Understand the works that have had taken effect on you. You have perhaps ethnocentrism ingrained in your mind, and Eurocentrism, and the idea of Western academics being superior to all other types of academics is perhaps ingrained in your mind, and the way that Western academics work and so on. And yeah, we understand it's a system that arrived at certain things and took from certain things and it's the prevailing approach and so on. Is it the only approach that has ever worked for humanity to arrive at conclusions? No, even where it borrows from but it's very Eurocentric. So you have to understand your biases and so on. And if you're going to die on the hill that it's possible for something to come from nothing, right? Please die on that hill knowing you're wrong. If you're going to believe that it's possible for things that are for something to be both impossible and possible at the same time, that's not possible at all. The fact that it has to be one or the other is necessary to arrive to rational conclusions. Much of atheism or denial of Allah or these attributes that we have discussed hinges on entertaining the possibility of the impossible, which we have been negating. We entertain it, but to arrive at the conclusion that it's impossible, not to leave it open-ended. Oh, it's possible. No, you can't leave it open-ended. Oh, it's if, maybe. This, then you'll never arrive at any reality, and then if everything is undermined, and that's the way you want to live your life, and then that is your choice that you'll make with the consequences that will follow in this world and the next. Of course, the details have been thoroughly discussed by philosophers, but the summary is what we are presenting. Again, I'm not an expert or even a student or a minor student of Kalam at the moment. So if you want to learn that, study it with somebody else. I'm just presenting the basic things that are presented here. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put khair and benefit to whoever it may be beneficial for, and forgive me for my mistakes, and and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to learn and that which benefits us and benefit from that which we learn. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid wa barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim fil alamin innaka Hamidum Majid. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Okay, questions. If I don't get some questions here, then generally when you are super clear, then that's where you don't get questions. Or if you're so confusing that people don't even know where to begin, you don't get questions. If I don't get questions this time, I'll know it was the second one. Let's see.
You understand the concept of, you just understand the middle concept of like contingency and omnipotence, then it makes everything else just really simple. I feel like you beat that in pretty good, so I feel like as long as you got that, then you pretty much understood everything. If it was
Alhamdulillah, the brother is saying that if you understand the middle concept of contingency and omnipotence.
If you can't box in, it's impossible because anywhere your mind goes, it's like outside of it's a different.
I mean, just subhanAllah, the essential aspects of Tawheed, right? This is the knowledge of Tawheed. This knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just realizing His oneness or treating Him as the only one just because that's what we're told to do, but realizing deep down and entrenching it in your gut and your mind and your brain that it is necessary for Allah to be one, and His oneness is not going to be threatened, has never been threatened, and will never be threatened. To just walk around with the core of Tawheed just overtaking every single one of your subatomic particles is the reason why I teach why we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To see His omnipotence and everything, see His power, to recognize His unreachable state. That when you say the statement of Subhanallah, that you actually know it and mean it. So Jazakallah khair, I'll forget that. Everybody, please go home, inshallah, class is over. But I'm going to talk about the concept of Subhanallah. A lot of people are unaware what Subhanallah means, because it gets translated to glory be to Allah. But that's not what Subhanallah means. Subhanallah comes from an Arabic word. I'm not going to go, I know exactly what the word is, but implying unreachableness, implying that khalas, someone has gone beyond your reach. So when we say Subhanallah, we are making a statement that Allah is so unreachable in His perfection from any imperfection. So we are both ascribing to Allah all positivity and negating from Him any negativity, and doing so to what degree? To the farthest degree, to the greatest degree. So imagine, what a kind of compliment is that? Sometimes you can compliment somebody with something. This guy's, mashallah, he's tall, but he's not very intelligent. So it's like, okay, you've given a compliment and you've insulted. Wal-'iyadhu billah, right? You can give, so when we say Subhanallah, you're ascribing all perfection in knowledge and power and ability and you're expressing, so it's not only that, it's the expression of your awe at Allah's knowledge and His ability and the wondrous level of His creation. So you're expressing your awe at the unreachable extent of Allah, all of the positive attributes, and you're also negating from Him everything that is negative or unbefitting of Him. Like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah does this in the Quran, Subhanallahi amma yasifun. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَلَدًا سُبْحَانَهُ. When they Subhanahu bal ibadu mukramun. Right? When they said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has children, or He has a son, or He has Subhanah. He is so far from that. He's unreachably far from that. It could never be possible that accusation could be true. Allah is too great for that accusation to be true. So it works to negate nonsense, and it works when you see a sunset, you're like, Subhanallah. So this is the meaning of subhanallah, that you're ascribing all positivity, negating anything unbefitting, and ascribing the positivity and negating the unbefittingness to the farthest degree possible for a human being to do, which is to say subhan, that is impossible, it's unreachable. There is no one who will ever have the knowledge. There can never be another who is beginningless, who is first, who is endless, who is needless, who is dissimilar, etc. Everything that exists besides the Rabb is the Alameen, and all of the Alameen was hadith and became into existence and. Once you realize this, then your subhanallah is conveying that full meaning. And then the next time you see that beautiful sunset or look at the moon or whatever, and you're like, subhanallah, look how this brings you such awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greatness. So to summarize it, how unreachable is Allah in His perfection from any imperfection, or by any imperfection? How unreachable is Allah in His perfection from any imperfection? That Allah is so perfect that any imperfection is impossible for Him, and that's a glimpse of the meaning of subhanallah. And the effect of that subhanallah, Allah it turns into an actual thing that sends blessings upon you your whole life. You enter into your grave, it's part of your deeds, which beautifies your deeds when they come to you. You're in the day of judgment, your subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu akbar, al-baqiyatu salihat, they come in front of you, behind you, to your right, to your left. Trees planted in Jannah, more massive a tree in Jannah, the Prophet ﷺ said, the rider 70, it takes years and years to across, and the earth itself will probably take a rider, we did the math, about 2 years to go across. While a tree, one subhanallah. Then one subhanallah, a person will be rocketed in his status in Jannah, that subhanallah, the different narrations of that power of that subhanallah, like the Prophet ﷺ said, so subhanallah walhamdulillah tamla'an ay tamla'u ma bayna as-sama'i wal ard, fills the bayna as-samawati wal ard, fills the gap, fills between the heavens and the earth. Forget about the universe, fills the universe of reward. You've just glorified Allah with a statement that is so beautiful that He chose it for Himself in the Quran. So what do you think is the reward that is befitting of that? If the last person to enter Jannah who did nothing will receive 10 times the universe in reward, then your one subhanallah catapults you, at least gives a samawat. Forget about this universe. Subhanallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is great, and every moment we spend remembering Him is to our benefit, and every moment we spend heedless of Him, we are in loss. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not allow us to not have regret and not have bad feelings in Jannah, then we'd just be regretting every moment that we didn't spend in His remembrance. And the very purpose of our creation is to arrive at knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if our purpose of creation is to arrive at gnosis of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then to truly understand what you're saying when you say Allah, who is Allah? When you say subhanallah, what is subhanallah, Allahu akbar? These are tremendous things. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala magnify all our deeds. Inshallah, we'll end here. Subhanakallah, bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
I was listening in my
Oh my God, thank you.
first year philosophy of man.
Barakallahu feekum, akramakallah. Off topic, sorry. I live in Australia and all mosques are northwest facing, so does this mean I can't pray in them? Send me a message on Messenger, inshallah. Or if you're in the WhatsApp group, then just send me a message as well.